Founder of Religion Today Film Festival in Trento, Italy. And we'll have Ms. Sadia Khalid, the editor of Showtime, the Dhaka Tribune in Bangladesh. And presiding the session will be Mr. Mofidul Haq, who's the cultural activist and trustee of the Bangladesh Liberation War Museum. So thank you, and if Hannah would come and begin, then she can be joined afterward here on the sofa by the discussion. High school for 4 years before I fled and found myself working for the National Film Board of Canada, which was the beginning of my work in cinema. And I'll be forever grateful. I was fortunate to be hired by Kathleen Shannon, who at the time ran what was called Studio D at the National Film Board of Canada. It was an absolutely groundbreaking studio. It was the women's studio. It's no longer in operation, but it was through that studio that many women, young women in Canada, got their first opportunity to make films, because the executive producer was Kathleen. All the producers in the group were women. So it was a terrific and very, very exciting time to be at the film festival, at the film board. I've worked in festivals for many years, either as a festival director or as a programmer, a special events coordinator. I particularly love and adore film programming because it provides for me the most expressive way to express my ideas. And I notice that in the room there are many film programmers. So we may have very different ways of working, but I absolutely love programming. And I'm going to give you some of my experiences in that. My guidepost in programming is that I always select films that I feel are positive, inherently rooted in instances of kindness, humanity, inclusiveness. I will never select horror films or films that are excessively violent. Gratuitous violence is all around us. We do not need to have our noses rubbed in it, or that's what I feel. I feel, on the contrary, the world is changing, and I'm dismayed by the changes that I see. Therefore, my programming has always become like my service to the world. And that might sound very corny, but it really has been my way of feeling I can make a contribution as a citizen of the world, and a positive contribution. So programming for me is always a very important step. I love it when people approach me after seeing a film to tell me how much the film meant to them. And I always make sure that the positive feedback gets back to the filmmaker, either the filmmaker directly or the producer, the agent. All I do is just provide the screening, but it's the filmmaker that needs to hear the accolades and needs to know that they have truly affected people. At the moment, I'm working with the Heartland Film Festival in Indianapolis, Indiana. I love my portfolio for this festival because every year I do a country focus. For October of this year, I'm working on an Israeli focus, and the bigger program is that every year I put together a program, or curate a program, of the films that are now called the Best International Feature Film.
And the police brought me immediately. I started arguing because they didn't give me back my passport quick. So they took me and put me in a small room for hours and hours. It was dark, no telephone, nothing. And I think, okay, they took the wrong person, but then it was why? Because I had all the Israeli stamps on the passport, and I said, well, then I started shouting, so someone came and said, why do you come to Iran with Israeli stamps, 20 Israeli stamps, why? And I said, yes, you invited me, you invite me and my Israeli friends. I mean, it's silly, you shouldn't be so much in front. But then they allowed me to get in, and it was better and better in the next years. But the same happened to me in Tel Aviv some year afterwards when I arrived with all my Iranian stamps. And they say, why? And still I started being quite rude instead of being kind, and it was hours, and then I had to call Rabbi friends they don't let me come out from the police station. And so it's better to be much kinder and a little bit, not tricky, but it's important to bring films out and to make films, not to quarrel with police all around the world. Then it happened to me again, so I will listen to your words from now on. 2 years ago in Arizona, we were there to film on the border and to follow some steps of the immigrants, and of course they didn't like we were really filming on the road. We had horses, symbolic horses, running in and out just in front of the road. And so they kept us. It was Andrea, who knows, and that time he was the one, my colleague, always kind, always nice. I'm the rude one. He was fighting with the police at the border. Oh, I had to take him. I don't know what happened, and maybe they hit and took him out, and I said, stay out of the border. And we spent almost 8 hours without water, without nothing under the sun. And that was a very bad situation. But at the end, I started to call the Prime Minister of Italy, and I gave his secretary to the policeman, and I said, explain why journalists must be stuck. We have all the permissions and everything. So it happens more times. And then I had a few more, let's say, mistakes. When you go and film in very difficult and hard situation, you need really to be so much respectful. I had the opportunity to film in many refugee camps. Once in Ethiopia, it was a camp closed to any foreigner, anyone. People were staying there since 17 years. Can you imagine? 17 years. In the men, the 70% had very deep psychiatric problems. So that is the main problem. And we were filming, and I didn't watch so much on the cameraman that day, and the cameraman went too much near to a man, and he got crazy, and we had to run away very quickly because it was so easy the night to come. And then the last, but that's a bit more funny, apart the situation, not funny, but sometimes you think it's your own work that's creating problems. We were, 5 years ago, we were in Erbil, 12 kilometers from the Daesh bombs. It was really on the border. And we were filming with people escaped from Mosul. Really a hard situation. We were in the Yazid camp. It was so sad. Everyone was really in a desperate situation. Let's say I was in a tent with a man, a Muslim man, with 5 small kids, and we spoke. He was very kind, and I said, where is your wife? And he answered to me, I really hope she's dead. He didn't want her to be in the hands of the Daesh. So in this hard situation, at one point, I sent all my crew back, just me and DOP, because I know he was a very good Spanish boy, able to deal. But we could feel the tension coming up from a corner of the camp. And someone told us, escape, escape, escape. Tension is coming up, escape. And I said, oh my God, what we have done, or maybe there are some Americans, because in that moment there were some journalists trying to enter the camp and they didn't give to them the permissions.
Comparison, but also it's interesting that it's an international film festival and we are focusing on women in cinema, and we have got a broad presentation here. And now the floor is open and you can come up with any question or any observation you have. So let's continue the discussion.
First of all, thank you for this wonderful panel. I believe Dali Alec, film producer from Croatia, filmmaker as well. It is really important to talk about these topics and all the problems that happen in our life. First of all, as long as you have hope and good intentions, you're not a failure. That's first of all what I wanted to say. And then learning from pain is actually what makes you wiser and shapes you as a person. If you didn't have any failures and mistakes, that means you haven't tried enough. This only shows that you haven't tried in your life really hard. I would just like to share experience as a young producer that education actually failed me. Most of my professors were
in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, East Pakistan, in a district town in Kumilla, married to a very important journalist and poet, Sanjeev Datta, and she stayed all her life in East Pakistan through many difficulties, and in 1971, her father-in-law, and very aged politician, was brutally murdered along with her brother-in-law, and her eldest son had a very traumatic experience, which is still one can see in his life. And she was 95, and she also wrote a very brilliant account of about her brother, Ritik Bhatt, and she was an accomplished singer, a great soothing personality in our cultural life, and we lost her yesterday. And every year the Dhaka International Conference on Women in Cinema is dedicated to one personality in our film world, and I think this year we can dedicate the conference to the memory of Pratiti Dotto. And so with that, I would request the audience and everybody to stand 1 minute silence in memory of Devi Pratiti Dotto. Thank you all. So with that, we close this session. We have 1 hour for lunch, and then we will meet in the next session.